My name is Heather Winslow, 32 years old. The elevator door slid open with a soft ding, and every head in the lobby turned toward me. My heels clicked against the marble floor, deliberate, each sound echoing like a heartbeat I finally owned. I wasn't there to prove anything, just to walk through the same doors I once wasn't allowed near. The smell of polished oak and champagne hung in the air, and with it, memories I thought I'd buried. Then came her voice. "Well, look who's pretending again," my Aunt Valerie called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. She lounged on one of the leather couches near the bar, a crystal glass in her hand, surrounded by her two gossiping friends. "Sweetheart," she added, her words dripping in cruelty, "this building charges rent. You sure you're not lost?" Laughter rippled through the room, bouncing off glass walls like the sound of knives. I didn't slow down. My fingers gripped the strap of my handbag tighter, my jaw locked. Every insult I'd ever swallowed burned behind my calm expression. "Maybe she's just visiting," Valerie sneered, "or delivering packages." I reached the reception desk, ignoring the giggles. The building manager, Mr. Green, always stern, always composed, suddenly hurried out from behind the counter like a man late for an appointment with destiny. "Miss Winslow," he said breathlessly, straightening his tie, "welcome home." The laughter died mid-echo. Valerie blinked. "What did you just call her?" Mr. Green turned to her politely. "I said, 'Welcome home, Miss Winslow. Her penthouse transfer was finalized this morning. Everything's ready upstairs.'" The sound of glass shattering on marble broke the silence. Valerie's drink slipped from her trembling fingers. Her friends gawked, wide-eyed. I turned toward her, the air around us crackling with disbelief. "Oh," I said softly, tilting my head. "I thought you knew. I bought the building last week." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The same woman who once told me I'd never make it without family money now stood in my lobby, pale and exposed. "You should be careful what you say in my building," I said, smiling faintly. "The walls have a funny way of echoing the truth." I turned and walked toward the private elevator. Each step felt like closing a chapter. Years of humiliation, dismissed dreams, and whispered pity melted away under the hum of marble floors and stunned silence. Inside the elevator, I caught a glimpse of Valerie's reflection in the mirror. Her drink-stained hand trembling, her pride collapsing quietly beside her. Finally, I whispered to myself, "Welcome home, Heather." The penthouse door opened with a soft click. The familiar scent of cedar and linen drifted out to meet me. I stepped inside, heels echoing on polished marble, light spilling automatically across glass walls, revealing the Manhattan skyline like a promise I'd made years ago. I set my purse down on the counter and exhaled. The silence wasn't empty. It was earned. But peace never lasts long when someone like Valerie exists. A sharp knock, 3 rapid, entitled taps, shattered the calm. I opened the door. Valerie stood there in her designer heels, clutching her handbag like a weapon. Her eyes swept over the space, desperate for something to insult. "So it's true," she muttered, stepping inside uninvited. "You actually bought this place?" "Careful," I said, leaning against the counter. "Your shoes are dripping disbelief all over my floor." She scoffed. "Don't flatter yourself. You think buying a penthouse suddenly makes you one of us?" "One of you?" I let out a quiet laugh. "I wouldn't insult myself like that." Her jaw tightened. "You're still the same girl who begged me for rent money 2 years ago. Don't stand there acting like you're some self-made miracle." I met her stare. "You're right. I'm not a miracle. I'm the result of every time you told me I couldn't do it." That hit her. The corner of her mouth twitched. For a moment, I saw something break in her, something small, human, maybe even afraid. Then she snapped. "You always had that attitude. That's why no one helped you. You burned every bridge." "No," I said calmly. "You burned them and handed me the match." The silence between us felt heavy, like the air before a storm. I poured a glass of water from the dispenser. "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "You've spent your whole life pretending to have power, measuring your worth in dinner parties and last names, but real power doesn't need to announce itself." Her eyes narrowed. "And what do you call this? Revenge?" "No," I said, taking a sip. "This is me coming home." She laughed, brittle and hollow, circling the room with her eyes darting to every polished surface, every hint of luxury she couldn't control. "This is temporary," she said finally. "People like you never stay on top. You'll make one wrong move, and it'll all come crashing down." "Then I'll build it again," I said simply. "That's the difference between us. You inherited. I learned." She flinched like the truth had teeth. Before she could retort, the elevator chimed again. Mr. Green stepped out, holding a folder. Miss Winslow, the updated ownership documents for the building, he said. Congratulations again. He nodded politely at Valerie before disappearing. Valerie stared at the folder as if it were poison. You bought the whole building? Technically, I said, flipping through the pages, just the tower. The restaurant downstairs is still under renovation, but I'll get that too. Her face flushed, and I saw panic flicker behind her eyes. Do you have any idea what you're doing? She hissed. You're playing with people you'll never fit in with. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I don't need to fit in, Valerie. I own the door they're all trying to walk through. For the first time in her life, she had no words. Her hand trembled slightly as she clutched her bag. Then she laughed, trying to gather herself. You think money changes everything? It doesn't buy class. Maybe not, I said softly, but it buys silence from people who used to laugh at me. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down and I watched her expression shift, from fury to something close to fear. What's wrong? I asked. She swallowed. Nothing. Liar, I said. Let me guess. The board meeting? She froze. How do you... Because your name came up in our due diligence for this purchase. Something about a charity report that didn't quite add up. Her voice broke. You ruined me. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you. For a long moment she stood there, eyes glassy, chest rising and falling too fast. I thought she might apologize, but pride was her armor. Cracked, yet unyielding. Get out of my home, Valerie, I said finally, steady and calm, before you embarrass yourself more. She didn't argue. She just turned toward the door, her heels scraping across the floor like retreating echoes of old power. When the elevator closed behind her, I leaned against the counter and let out a long breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Outside, the city glowed, endless and alive. I wasn't sure if what I felt was victory, or simply the strange lightness that comes when a ghost finally leaves the room. Let them talk, I whispered to myself. I'm home now. The invitation arrived 2 days later, embossed in gold, sealed with a delicate letter V. Valerie's name stared up at me like a challenge. Lawson Charity Gala, an evening of legacy and power. Legacy. The word almost made me laugh. Valerie didn't believe in legacy. She believed in control. Yet the timing wasn't accidental. After what happened in the lobby, she needed to remind the world who still held the crown. I could have ignored it. I could have stayed home and enjoyed the silence of my skyline. But when I set the invitation down on the counter, something inside me, something quiet but undefeated, whispered, go. That night, the air outside the Hilton Grand shimmered with flash photography and the scent of perfume that cost more than some people's rent. When the valet opened my car door, I stepped out into a sea of flashing lights and murmurs. Heads turned, not because of the gown, but because stories travel faster than truth. The girl they once mocked now owned half the skyline. Inside, chandeliers glittered like suspended constellations. The air buzzed with the sound of laughter and calculated compliments. I could feel the eyes that followed me, some curious, some judgmental, others quietly in awe. I wasn't here to blend in. I was here to be seen, to claim the space I once begged permission to enter. Valerie stood near the stage, her champagne glass trembling just slightly despite the practiced calm of her smile. She wore gold, of course. She always wore gold. It wasn't color to her, it was armor. When she saw me, her expression froze for a heartbeat before she forced her lips into a smooth curve. Heather, she said sweetly, you made it. I did, I replied. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Her two friends, the same ones from the lobby, hovered nearby like loyal shadows. One leaned toward the other and whispered too loudly, Isn't that the girl who used to wait tables downtown? I turned toward her and smiled gently. Yes, I said, and you're the woman who used to leave a $1 tip on a $200 meal. A few heads turned, her face flushed crimson, and Valerie's jaw tightened. Let's keep things civil, shall we? Valerie said through her teeth. Of course, I said sweetly. I wouldn't want to lower the tone of your legacy. Her eyes flickered with hatred she tried to disguise as charm. Before she could answer, a tall man in a charcoal suit approached. Mark Everett, CEO of Silverstone Investments. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. Miss Winslow, he said warmly, I've been following your work. Your real estate acquisitions have everyone talking. Thank you, I said, holding his gaze. Valerie's smile strained. You two know each other? Mark turned politely toward her. We do now. Heather's firm just acquired the West Side District project. We were hoping to invest, but she beat us to it. The silence that followed was exquisite. Valerie's expression wavered for a fraction of a second before she forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Well, isn't that impressive? Mark excused himself a moment later, but not before murmuring to me, "The right people are noticing. Keep your composure tonight." His words lingered like a promise. Valerie turned to me, her smile brittle. "You think you're clever, don't you? Buying up projects, charming investors, pretending to belong in this world?" I looked at her calmly. "Pretending? No, Valerie. Pretending was your department." Before she could reply, a voice announced from the microphone, "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our host, Mrs. Valerie Lawson, will begin shortly." The lights dimmed as she glided toward the stage, gathering applause that sounded rehearsed. She stood tall, poised, but I could see the tremor in her hand as she adjusted the mic. "Tonight," she began, "is about giving back, about community, and about the people who make this city what it is." The words floated elegantly through the ballroom, but to me they rang hollow. She spoke about charity, sacrifice, and vision, things she'd never practiced. Yet the crowd nodded along, eager to be seen applauding virtue. As she continued, my mind drifted back to nights when I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my head. I remembered calling her for help and hearing her laughter through the phone. "You made your bed," she'd said. "Lie in it." Now here she was, preaching about compassion. When her speech ended, polite applause rippled through the room. Then she smiled too widely and said, "And of course, we are honored tonight to have my dear niece with us, Miss Heather Winslow. Her recent success is a reminder that fortune favors the bold." A spotlight swung toward me. The sound of forks pausing midair filled the silence. She expected a nod, maybe a polite smile. Instead, I stood, slowly, calmly. Every eye followed me as I walked toward the stage. Valerie's smile flickered. "Heather, this isn't—" "I just want to say something," I said, taking the microphone from her. My voice was steady. "You're right, Aunt Valerie. Fortune does favor the bold, but it also remembers those who were kind when no one was watching." The crowd quieted. My words hung in the air like smoke. "I used to think success was about money or titles," I continued. "But standing here tonight, I realize it's about how many times you get back up after being told you'll never make it." Murmurs spread through the audience. I could feel their eyes shifting between me and her. "And to those who laughed when I fell," I added softly, "thank you, because you taught me how to stand taller." The room erupted, not with polite claps this time, but with genuine applause. Valerie stood beside me, frozen, her golden mask cracking under the heat of a truth she could no longer control. I handed her the microphone back, smiled, and walked off the stage. The applause followed me like a wave that refused to die down. From the corner of my eye, I saw Mark Everett nodding in quiet approval. Valerie, still on stage, looked like a statue carved from shame and envy. Later that evening, as guests mingled on the balcony overlooking the city, Mark approached me again. "You handled that beautifully," he said. "Class over chaos. We could use someone like you on our next project." "I'll think about it," I said with a faint smile. Valerie passed by on her way out, her gaze avoiding mine. For once, she didn't have anything to say. The silence was more satisfying than any argument could ever be. Outside, the air was crisp and alive. I paused by the entrance as my car pulled up, the city lights painting the pavement in gold. Behind me, I could still hear the fading hum of music and murmurs from the ballroom. I had walked in alone, carrying years of humiliation and unfinished wars, but I was leaving lighter, freer. Because tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my voice. As I stepped into the car, I looked out at the skyline and whispered, "Let them talk. I've got work to do." Morning sunlight spilled through the penthouse windows, painting the marble floors in sheets of gold. I stood barefoot, coffee in hand, watching the city stretch awake beneath me. My phone buzzed relentlessly across the counter. Unread messages, news alerts, notifications stacked like dominoes waiting to fall. The video of my speech from the gala had gone viral overnight. Headlines called it the most graceful power move of the year. I hadn't meant to become a story. I just wanted to tell mine. But fame has a way of finding those who stop chasing it. The screen lit again. Incoming call. Valerie. For a moment, I just stared at the name, pulsing on the display like a wound reopening. I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity has teeth. I picked up. "Morning, Aunt Valerie," I said. Her tone was low, stripped of the arrogance that once filled every word. You humiliated me last night, she said flatly. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said calmly. I told the truth. That wasn't your moment, Heather, she hissed. That was my event, my people. Funny, I said. They didn't seem like yours when they stood and applauded. She was silent for a beat, the kind of silence that trembles with anger. Then came the sigh, long, bitter. You think this means you've won? Life doesn't work like that. People will turn on you. They always do. Maybe, I said, but at least I won't turn on myself to please them. There was nothing left for her to say. The woman who once ruled over every conversation now sat on the other end of the line, defeated by her own reflection. Goodbye, Aunt Valerie, I said softly, and ended the call. I set the phone down and leaned against the balcony door. The skyline shimmered with possibility, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end, just a pause between storms. Revenge never ends cleanly. It lingers in the spaces where forgiveness should live. Later that week, my assistant Mia walked into my office holding a folder, eyes bright. The deal went through, she said. We just finalized the acquisition of Lawson Holdings. For a second, I didn't move. Wait, Lawson Holdings? As in... She nodded. Your aunt's firm. It went bankrupt after her investors pulled out. You're now the majority shareholder. I sank into my chair, staring at the folder like it might burn through my hands. Life had come full circle. Quietly, elegantly, and without a trace of gloating. What do you want me to do about it? Mia asked carefully. I took a breath. Send her a formal notice. Make it kind. No gloating, just facts. You don't want her to know you bought it? Oh, she'll know, I said with a faint smile. But I don't need to rub it in. Some victories speak for themselves. That evening, I left work later than usual. The sun had dipped low, the city lights flickering awake, one window at a time. As I stepped out of the car in front of my building, Mr. Green greeted me with his usual calm smile. Evening, Miss Winslow, he said warmly. Behind him, the same marble lobby gleamed, the same one where Valerie once laughed at me. Only now, everything felt lighter, quieter. A woman passed by, holding her little girl's hand. The child looked up at me, eyes wide with innocent awe. You live here? She asked. I smiled. Yes, I do. That's so cool, she said shyly. My mom says people who live high up must be brave. I crouched slightly to meet her eyes. Your mom's right, but it's not about how high you live, it's about how hard you climbed. She grinned, a missing front tooth making her smile even brighter, then skipped away. I watched her disappear into the elevator and felt something unclench in my chest. It hit me then. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing above anyone. I just felt at peace. I took the elevator up to the penthouse. The mirrored doors reflected a face I almost didn't recognize. She wasn't the girl who begged for help. She wasn't the woman who needed revenge to breathe. She was someone new, someone who had built her life out of ruin and learned how to be gentle again. When the elevator doors opened, the soft glow of home welcomed me. I walked to the window, coffee still warm in my hand, and looked down at the city below. The lights blinked like a heartbeat, steady and sure. Valerie's name would fade from headlines soon. Her empire, her pride, her golden facade, all of it would crumble quietly beneath the weight of truth. But I wouldn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because the real victory wasn't hers to lose. It was mine to redefine. Success wasn't about towers or titles. It was about silence, the kind that comes when you no longer need to prove anything. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, soft against the glass. I pressed my palm to the window, feeling the rhythm of the rain match the rhythm of my heart. I thought of the little girl downstairs, of her mother's words, of how, once upon a time, I had been that small and afraid, looking up at people who seemed untouchable. Now I knew better. The climb was never about reaching the top. It was about learning to keep going, even when no one believed you could. I turned away from the window, letting the city blur behind me. My reflection in the glass lingered for a moment longer, a quiet reminder of the woman I'd fought to become. And just before the elevator doors closed, I whispered to the empty room, the same words I'd carried since the day I walked back into that lobby. Not pretending anymore. The doors slid shut with a soft hum, sealing the past behind me. For the first time, it truly felt like peace.